Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is WireDogSec back with another video for you guys. And in today's video, we're going to go over this room in TryHackMe called Atlas. Hack the Atlas server in this beginner room covering Windows attack methodology. So obviously we're going to do some penetration testing, CTF type of activities in here just by looking at the tasks, room overview, deploy. You're going to do some enumeration. You're going to actually attack the target box and then final thoughts. So let's go ahead and get into it. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you're new here, hit the like button, and then comment below your thoughts and opinions. Task 1, Introduction, Room Overview and Deploy. Welcome to Atlas. This is an introductory level room which aims to teach you the very basics of Windows system exploitation from initial access through to privilege escalation. You do not need any prior experience before attempting this room. However, it would help to have an understanding of basic Linux usage and various other fundamental topics. Resources for these topics are linked at appropriate places in the room for extra reading. You will find that a lot of this room is completely guided. However, there are places where the instructions are slightly more vague. These places are designed to help you develop the research mindset with which is and are all important in hacking. Press the green start button, which I've already done. So let's move on to the next one. And that's very important. I mean, TryHackMe does have a lot of walkthroughs, like handholding and stuff like that, but there are sections in rooms that require you to go out and do your own research on how to exploit a particular vulnerability or how to do a particular thing in a tool and such like that, which is accurate when it comes to the real world. You run into issues that you don't know offhand, so you got to go and do some Googling. All right, task number 2, enumeration, port scanning. The key to hacking is information. Contrary to what you may see in films and pop culture, hacking is not usually a matter of sitting in a darkened room and yada yada yada. Be sure to pause the video and read the rest of this here. I've already gone through it, obviously, but just for the sake of the video, not to make it too long, because we want to get into the meat and potatoes, go ahead and pause the video and then go through and read this. All right, so we're going to go down here. Basically, we're going to do some port scanning, is what it's saying up here. And talking about TCP, UDP protocols, and there's more information. Click that link there. Port scanning effectively attempts to connect to specific ports on the target and checks the responses from the server to see if each targeted port is open, closed, or protected by a firewall. The most common tool for port scanning is a command line tool called Nmap, which we're going to use in this room, obviously. I'm going to use RustScan and then use some Nmap options with that. RustScan is a lot faster than Nmap. And if you saw my other videos, that's what I particularly use is RustScan. I'll use Nmap as well, but I prefer RustScan because it's a lot faster. At its most basic, the syntax of Nmap is quite simply Nmap IP address. For example, scanning the always running 10.10.10.10 box on the TryHackMe network gives us the following output, and it has it right there. Basic information. This is useful, but doesn't give us quite everything we want. And it's going to go on to talk about using the different flags and stuff in here, or switches. The dash VV sets verbosity level to 2. Dash PN says don't bother assessing whether the machine is active, just scan it. Basically, it's going to disable that ping. So sometimes these machines will have pings disabled by default to prevent, ping sweeps and stuff on your network. Well, this completely ignores the ping and just going to scan that box anyway because something's there, but I want to scan it anyway. So, and then dash P is going to be for the ports and stuff like that. And let's see here. It says check out the Nmap room for more information on Nmap. Then start answering some questions here. You'll need to use the dash capital PN switch here. Okay, I already know that. And then with the Nmap port default port scan or port range, you should find that 2 ports are open. What port numbers are these? Submit the answers, comma separated. And then what services does Nmap think is running on the higher of the 2 ports? We would usually go on more in lot depth about scanning, but we will leave it at that for this introductory room. We have what we need for the time being. So let's go ahead and do the scan here. Okay, it appears that the Nmap scan has finished. I went ahead and ran an Nmap scan using -VV-SV for service version on that IP address, and very verbose mode went through, did its thing, and it says 2 ports are open, 3389, port 8080. and 3389 is running RDP, Microsoft Terminal Services, and then port 8080 is running HTTP. Scroll down for some more information here, and looks like that's it. Then we're going to take a look at the Rust scan, and I fixed my Rust scan, by the way. I forgot the -A for addresses, but I used pretty much the same parameters here for Nmap, and it actually found 3 ports open. And let's go ahead and review these real quick. Open port, open port, open port. Let's see here. Yep, Microsoft Terminal Services, and one's running HTTP and port 8080 as well. All right, so yeah, let's see. So the open ports are going to be 3389 and 8080 looks like for this one here. So I'm going to type those in. And what services does Nmap think is running on the higher of the 2 ports? And that's going to be this HTTP proxy. So let's type that in, HTTP proxy. We would usually go on to do a lot more in-depth scanning, yada, yada, yada. So go ahead and complete that and move on to task number 3 here. Task number 3, enumeration, service enumeration. The previous task, we discovered 2 services. Now it's time to see what we can do with them. First task was found on port 3389. This is traditionally Microsoft's RDP protocol, which is used to get a graphic remote desktop session remote machine. We can verify this is RDP with an Nmap service scan, which we've already done. And here, the Microsoft Terminal Services tells us that this is indeed RDP. Knowing this exists is beneficial as it potentially gives us a stable way to access the box later on. However, there are no recent vulnerabilities in the Microsoft implementation of RDP, so this isn't hugely useful to us at the moment. Let's move on. Take a look at port 8080. Doesn't have an official designation, but it's often used for HTTP services. For example, HTTP proxies frequently used as Nmap incorrectly identified the service as. Nmap is unable to get an accurate reading on the service here, what makes it more interesting. What happens when we try to access it via a web browser? So let's go ahead and see about that. So let's go here, go back up and get my IP. All right, 10.67.156, and it's going to be port 8080. Pulls up the little prompt just like it had in the example below. Right? Then we can get a request for authentication. This could have gone better, but it does tell us one very important thing. We're definitely dealing with a web server of some kind. Whilst newer versions of Firefox don't seem to show it, these use HTTP basic authentication credential boxes. Usually come with a message from the server. If we can get a look at that message, then we might get a clue as to what's going on. Curl is a command line tool that lets us make and craft requests over various protocols. HTTP, let's use it here. So let's go ahead and try out curl, see what it does. I'm just going to cancel here. And we're going to use curl in this box here. So curl 10.10.67.156, and it's going to be on port 8080-V. Okay, looks like we've got the same answers they did here. This is thin VNC, which is very interesting. 401 access denied, of course. But yeah, looks like the most interesting thing here is going to be this thin VNC. So it's probably something we can exploit later on. We'll have a variety of sections in the request. All have been highlighted, right? So go ahead and pause the video, take a look at that. In yellow, we have the request header. These are what we sent to the server. We aren't interested in just in these just now. In green, we have the response headers. These are what the server sent to us in response. This contains something interesting. In cyan, we have the response body telling us that we aren't allowed to access the site unless we supply some credentials. So yeah, the green portion, and then it's got highlighted in red. Like I said, we're gonna look at this thin VNC. In red, we're looking for a thin VNC. Name of a web-based virtual network computing server like RDP. VNC allows us to access the device remotely. However, this server allows us to access the device from our web browser rather than requiring um, a separate client to connect. As a side note, if you're using a attack box in your browser right now, then you are also connected to it using VNC. Little research informs us that the latest reverse or release of then VNC is very old, this vastly increases our chances of being vulnerable to something. Let's open the terminal and a tool called Certs exploit. Look for a software vulnerability. So I'm going to go ahead and clear this out and then use Certs exploit. So we're going to type in Certs exploit and then VNC. This comes in handy when you look for any type of other vulnerabilities as well. It'll go and search for a particular vulnerability related to that target box, whatever services, software it's running. It says bingo, use Certs exploit to find the vulnerability in VNC, which is already done. So let's move on to task number 4, attack foothold. At this point, we usually copy the exploit, read it through it carefully, very important, then deploy it against the target machine. When we're satisfied that it only does what it claims to do, in this case, the exploit and exploit DB doesn't actually work, but it does give us an idea of what we're dealing with. The short version is the latest version of VNC at the time of writing tends to pass reversal vulnerability, which effectively allows us to read any file on the machine. Combine this with the fact that VNC stupidly stores this access credentials in plain text, completely unsecured. We can read the following or the file containing the credentials and bypass authentication. For the sake of keeping things very simple, we're going to use a working copy of the exploit to access the credentials. So I'm going to use git clone and get this version of it onto the attack box. See if you can figure out how to do this in your terminal by yourself. Otherwise, the command is given in the hint. Okay, so go ahead and clear this out here. And I'm going to copy this over. All right, I'm going to use that git clone to get it in there. So I'm going to type this out. So git clone. All right, I'm just going to copy this in here. Hit enter. So looks like we have it on the box here. So let's use ls, and there it is. So we got it on here. So complete that. Switch into the newly created exploit directory. Set the executable set it to executable. So we go ahead and cd into that. Like that, and then ls, and there we go. So chmod plus x, and then that's Python script. Awesome. So it looks good. And try executing an exploit. You should see a help menu. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. Clear that out. And it wants us to use this. So go ahead and just follow along. Oops, if it helps, I put in the okay, host port. Following area arguments required host and port. Okay, so it was 10.10. Just go back here. 10.10.67 156. 7.156. And port was 8080. Awesome. Okay. Says the script requires 2 arguments, which you've already done, host and port, because it errored out when I tried to run it by itself. Obviously, it's going to error out there. So we completed that, and then use the credentials found in the script to get past the basic HTTP. So let's go ahead and do that. And then bonus question: read through the exploit code and try to perform the exploit manually using curl or burps. So you may need to look into the path normalization for error debugging. Okay, so let's go ahead and just log in as this. Atlan's hold up the heavens. So I'm going to copy this. And let's go back to our Firefox here. And it's going to be Atlas, and then that password. Don't save. Cool. And you can go ahead and try this bonus here, see if you can get it manually, the manual exploit to work. I might do that later on in the video, but we're going to continue on to task number 5 here. All right, task number 5, access VNC to RDP. If you reach this task, you should have user access to the machine. Congratulations. The access that we have just now is mildly revolting, though. The VNC does not provide the nicest interface to use. It would struggle to use a lot of functionality in the machine through it, so let's go ahead and try that, see what it looks like. And okay, it does look pretty terrible. Yeah, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and disconnect from this and then minimize this and continue on here. Cast your mind back to our initial enumeration. Remember, we found that Microsoft RDP services were running on port 3389, assuming that we have the proper credentials. We can connect to this from Linux using a tool called xFreeRDP, and it looks like this. Got the syntax and stuff out there. He goes on to explain it. This /v, then IP address, specify what you want to connect to, then username, password, self-explanatory username, password, cert ignore, RDP connections are encrypted. If our attack machine doesn't recognize the certificate presented by the machine we're trying to connect to, warn us and ask if we want to proceed. This switch simply ignores that warning automatically. Plus, clipboard allows you to use copy and paste from attacking machine to the target machine. Dynamic resolution lets us resize the GUI, and drive and share our final switch. This shares our own /TMP temp directory with the target. This is an extremely useful trick as it allows us to execute scripts and programs from our own machine without actually transferring them to the target machine. We will use this in action later on. Most people take the easy option when it comes to passwords and use password reuse. So let's go ahead and connect to this machine using that. I already have it typed out there, so I'm going to press enter and connect to the machine. It looks a lot better than the other interface, that's for sure. It looks like an actual RDP session. So that's completed, and task number 6 here, privilege escalation. Windows exploitation is a massive talk of it, which is complicated greatly by the commonplace nature of various defense mechanisms, antivirus software being the most well-known of these. Exploiting an up-to-date Windows target with the default defenses active is far out with the scope of this room, so we will assume that the Atlas server has had the defense mechanisms deactivated. At this point, you're going to use like something like WinPs or Seatbelt to do some more enumeration on it. This is primary tools that we may use to employ here. However, there are many tools available, and manual enumeration is always a wise idea. I've used WinPs in the past. It works pretty good. I don't think I've used Seatbelt yet, but maybe we'll take a look at that later on. That said, Windows enumeration can be daunting. There are hundreds of different vectors to consider. To keep this room simple, we will instead look at a set of exploits in the principal service, which are unpatched at the time of writing. Principal is notorious for privilege escalation vulnerabilities. It runs with maximum available permissions under the anti-authority system account and is a popular target for vulnerability research. There have been many vulnerabilities found in the service in the past. However, one of the latest is referred to as Print Nightmare, which I've done a couple of videos over Print Nightmare, so be sure to check those out if you haven't done so already. We'll use Print Nightmare to elevate our privileges on this target. So the questions here, there are many different implementations of Print Nightmare available. You're advised to use a PowerShell version written by Caleb Stewart and John Hammond. Okay, so we're going to use that version and then navigate to temp directory on your attacking VM and then clone the repository. Remember that the /drive temp share argument in the xrdp command. It's about time to come in useful. Okay. Inside RDP session, open a new PowerShell window, and the repository that we downloaded contains the PowerShell PS1 script that needs to be imported. We can import it using this command here, or the syntax here, and make sure to include the dot at the start. This uses dot syntax to import any functions exposed by the script we're using, yada yada yada. This allows us to view and thus import files that are stored in the temp folder on our attacking machine. Only one thing left to do, run the exploit. Okay, so let's go ahead and follow these steps here to get to that point down here where we're going to run the actual exploit on this box. All right, I ran into the issue trying to use this TSC client or TS client share syntax like they try to use. So I just did some Googling, and I'm going to use this plus drive just to link everything to this RDP session here. All right, and just to show you that everything's linked here, it's got it right here. All right, and go to TMP right there, and then it's got my exploit stuff there. So there's that. And also the resolution is like jacked up. It wouldn't let me um, modify this free RDP screen here for some reason. But let's get back to it. So I'm going to go ahead and import this, right? And let's see if it will actually run. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. Type in R to run it once, and then we're going to do the invoke nightmare here. All right, went through it, did its thing, added this admin user here to the local admins group using this password. And now we're going to elevate our privileges by opening up a command shell as that user. So I tried to do it their way inside of here, but I kept getting an error message. So I'll just show you. I don't know what was going on with that. right? So they want to do it this way, right? Password, and it's giving me this error here. So um, what I did was I just took out all this credential stuff here, typed in that, and then entered it this way, and it seemed to work. So there we go. Now we're running as administrator, as you can see there at the top, and then who am I? Running as that admin account, and it wants us to do this who am I groups on here. So let's type that in. Groups. As you can see, built-in administrators, group line at the bottom, outputting mandatory label, high level. Okay, yep, which we have here, built-in administrators. Um, yeah, right there, and then mandatory label high. So that wraps up this task here. Let's move on to task number 7, post-exploitation. You could also log in as this admin account via RDP if you want to get in that way, and then elevate to a administrator session inside of command prompt or PowerShell. Task 7, attack post-exploitation. Awesome, we have admin access. Now, what do we do with it? Now, pause the video and go ahead and read this information here. Check out the SeerSam link if you're in the room. Check out the Mimikatz link and check out the creator. We're going to use Mimikatz to dump some password stuff. Okay, and you're going to get the latest release from the release page. So there's a link to it. You're going to unzip the file, which I've already done. As you can see there on the side. All right, I'm just going to minimize that. And then I already have the command ready to go to fire off. So I'm going to skip down here to the bottom where we're actually launching the Mimikatz prompt. So let's go ahead and do that. And let's see here. If this is successful, then you should get some pretty ASCII art and a new terminal prompt. So let's see what's going on here. That was weird. It like froze or something, but we have it open there. So that's done. It says when we start Mimikatz, we usually have to execute 2 commands before we start dumping hashes. So let's go ahead and do that. See what it does. So privilege, debug, if I can spell correctly, debug. Okay, that worked. And then token elevate. Awesome. It says debug obtains debug privileges, which, without going into too much depth in the Windows privilege structure, allows us to access other processes for debugging purposes. Then token elevate, simply put, this takes us from our administrative shell with high privileges into system level shell privileges with maximum privileges. Okay, this is something that we have the right to do as administrator, but it's not usually possible using normal Windows operations. With these commands executed, we are ready to dump some password hashes. Awesome. So we're going to type this command in here, lsa dump SAM, dump the SAM database on here. So dump and then SAM. Awesome. Then there's the hashes here, as you can see here. Go through and look at this stuff here, NTLM stuff. So I've used Mimikatz before in the past. It's a pretty common tool for dumping hashes, password information, stuff like that. So there's the NTLM hash for administrator account in there. Okay, so that's done. And then what is the administrator account's NTLM password hash? And that's going to be here at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste that. This copy and paste was not working, so let me see if it'll work this time. Here, let's see here. Paste. Awesome, cool. So I'm going to copy this out of here, paste in the answer. Cool. Awesome. So that appears to be the end of it. Task number 8. Final thoughts. Congratulations, you hacked Atlas. This was a beginner box, which has hopefully provided you with some skills which will prove useful as you progress in your hacking journey. We covered initial exploitation of outdated software, as well as exploiting the Windows print spooler and dumping password hashes with Mimikatz. Kudos for you for completing this room. Now go back and hack some more. And this room was pretty awesome, especially if you're a beginner. It took you through all these steps of the hacking process during that initial discovery, enumeration of ports, services, software, and stuff like that. The most important thing, as with anything, is going to be enumeration. Maybe you couldn't find a particular avenue to get in, so you have to go back and do some more enumeration. So always enumerate, 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 and then start looking for vulnerabilities in that information that you discovered, and then you can hopefully obtain a foothold into that target machine. All right, y'all, if you enjoyed this video, if you find it of value, be sure to hit that like button. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button, and then comment below your thoughts and opinions. As always, thank you for watching, and have a nice day.